January 7, 1904. Manhattan. A woman dies. Her husband sends 3 words north. Stop all construction. 300 workers drop their tools. Hammers freeze mid-swing. Paintbrushes fall to the ground. An entire castle, 90% complete, is abandoned. Forever. But here's what nobody tells you about this story. The castle wasn't just abandoned. It was left to rot for 73 years. Vandals destroyed it. Thieves stripped it bare. Nature reclaimed it. By 1977, engineers said it should be demolished. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Strangers who never met the man who built it decided to finish what love started. This is the story of Boldt Castle, the greatest love story ever told, or perhaps the greatest lie. 1864, New York Harbor. A boy steps off a ship, 13 years old, Prussian, alone, no family, no money, cannot speak a single word of English. His name is George Charles Boldt. In 40 years, he will build the most famous hotel in the world. In 35 years, he will begin construction on America's largest private castle. But right now, in this moment, he is nobody. He finds work at a dockside hotel, the lowest position imaginable. Busboy, clearing tables, washing dishes, scrubbing pots until his hands bleed, sleeping in a basement on a cot that smells of mildew. Paid almost nothing. Most immigrants stay there, trapped, working themselves to death in jobs that lead nowhere. George Boldt watches instead. He studies how the hotel operates, how guests are treated, what makes them return, what makes them spend money. He learns English by listening to conversations. He memorizes how the kitchen runs, who does what, when, why. He discovers something revolutionary. A hotel isn't about beds and food. It's about how people feel. Make a guest feel important. Make them feel seen. Make them feel cared for, and they'll return. They'll tell their friends. They'll pay anything. This single insight will make him a millionaire. But first he must climb. By his early 20s, Boldt manages kitchens. Still brutal work. Still poverty wages. He tries leaving New York once, heading to Texas, chasing better opportunities. It fails spectacularly. He returns poorer than when he left. Back in New York, another kitchen job. More watching, more learning. Then 1876, the door that changes everything. William Carr, steward of the Philadelphia Club, needs someone to manage their dining room. The Philadelphia Club isn't just exclusive. It's the oldest gentlemen's club in America, founded 1734. Members include colonial aristocracy, old money, real power. Carr offers Boldt the position. Boldt accepts immediately. In Philadelphia, he learns how true wealth operates. Not nouveau riche showiness, quiet confidence, perfection without ostentation, service that anticipates needs before they're spoken, discretion absolute. These lessons will define everything he builds. But more importantly, at the Philadelphia Club, he meets someone, Louise Augusta Carr, William Carr's daughter. Born 1860, grew up surrounded by hospitality. Understands service, quality, presentation instinctively. She's 15 when they meet. He's 26. Stop. Before you judge that age gap, remember, this is 1876. Different era, different standards. Her father approves. They court properly. June 14th, 1877. They marry. She's 17. He's 26. Here's what makes their marriage extraordinary. Louise isn't a wealthy heiress bringing money. Her father is respectable, but not rich. A club steward, not a club member. Boldt, despite his skill, is still a hired manager. They will build their fortune together. This partnership, this equality, this collaboration between husband and wife in 1877 is revolutionary, and it will define the castle they eventually build. But first, they must work. 1881, Philadelphia. George and Louise have saved enough to gamble everything. They purchased the Bellevue Hotel on Broad and Walnut Streets. Small property, more restaurant than hotel. But it's theirs. Louise transforms it. Fresh flowers on every table. Candles providing soft light. Tables spaced for privacy. Attention to aesthetic detail that makes dining an experience. not just a meal. But her real innovation is understanding what nobody else sees. Wealthy women are tired of domestic confinement. They want elegant spaces outside their homes where they can socialize, meet, exercise influence. The Bellevue becomes that space. The food is exceptional. George hires the best chefs, pays them well. But people talk about Louise's touches, the feeling that this room was made for them. Word spreads through Philadelphia society. Within months, they're serving the city's elite. There's even a story that the bold ship Philadelphia Terrapin to Queen Victoria. Whether true or marketing, it shows their reputation has crossed the Atlantic. George then does something brilliant. He purchases the Stratford Hotel directly across the street. Now he controls both corners. Competition eliminated. Market dominance achieved. By the late 1880s, wealthy New Yorkers traveling to Philadelphia book tables at the Bellevue. The Astors visit. The Vanderbilts dine there. These visits matter, because among the frequent guests is Abner Bartlett, a real estate agent who works for William Waldorf-Astoria. Bartlett notices George's management, Louise's refinement. He mentions them to Astor. 1891. William Waldorf-Astoria is planning something ambitious, a hotel in New York City that will surpass anything America has ever seen. He needs someone who understands luxury service, who can manage a massive operation, who has proven capable of attracting elite clientele. He offers George Boldt the position. But there's a problem. The Astor family is at war with itself, William Waldorf. Astor despises his cousin's wife, Caroline Astor, the Mrs. Astor. She holds an annual ball that determines who matters in New York society. William Waldorf resents her social gatekeeping, so he decides to humiliate her. He'll build a hotel, a commercial establishment, right next to her residence on Fifth Avenue, a business among homes. It will destroy her neighborhood's exclusivity. He hires architect Henry Hardenberg, German Renaissance style, elaborate facade. Then he offers George Boldt the position of proprietor. Boldt recognizes the opportunity, but also the risk. The location is residential. Success depends on attracting society clientele who might resent the hotel's existence, and Boldt needs to raise $100,000 just to furnish the place. He commits anyway. Louise's design sensibility will make the Waldorf elegant enough to overcome the location concerns. March 13, 1893. The Waldorf opens. Timing couldn't be worse. A severe economic depression grips America. Panic of 1893. Banks failing. Businesses collapsing. Boldt suffers a nervous breakdown from stress. But his strategy holds. The Waldorf offers exclusivity to those who can afford it. During hard times, the very wealthy spend conspicuously to demonstrate their immunity to troubles. Within months, profitable. Then John Jacob Astor IV makes his move. Mrs. Astor's son owns the property beside the Waldorf. He hires the same architect, announces construction of the Astoria Hotel, 17 stories, even more elaborate. Opens 1897. George Boldt does something few could pull off. He convinces John Jacob IV to let him lease and manage the Astoria. Then he convinces both feuding cousins that merging operations benefits everyone. Somehow they agree. The Astoria opens. Boldt immediately merges operations. Connecting corridor joins the buildings. The Waldorf-Astoria is born. 1,600 rooms, the largest hotel in the world, the most prestigious address in America. But the hotel's success depends on more than George's management. Louise's influence is everywhere. She designs rooms and public spaces with feminine elegance. Fresh flowers daily, soft lighting. Every female guest finds a pincushion on her dresser, small touch signaling attention to women's needs. Revolutionary changes follow. She eliminates separate entrances for ladies. They can enter through main doors like men, acknowledging their equal status as guests. The Waldorf-Astoria introduces innovations that become hotel industry standards. Room service. Guests can order food delivered to rooms. Oscar Shirky, maitre d' known as Oscar of the Waldorf, creates signature dishes. Waldorf salad, Thousand Island dressing. The New York Times later writes that Boldt, more than any other man, is responsible for the modern American hotel. The Boldts are now enormously wealthy. Boldt earns the highest salary of any employee in America at Century's turn. Beyond salary, he owns the lease and operations, generating substantial profit. Estimates of his wealth reach 15 to 25 million, roughly 400 to 700 million today. They maintain apartments at the Waldorf-Astoria, living in the luxury they created. George Jr. attends Cornell University. Clover receives education at the Spence School in Manhattan. By the late 1890s, they've achieved the American dream beyond anything imaginable. But success brings exhaustion. Life inside a famous hotel is tiring. You're always on, always fixing, judging, choosing, hosting. George remembers something from his Prussian childhood. The castles along rivers. The summer retreats where wealthy families escaped city heat. Islands and lakes where life slowed to gentler pace. He and Louise need that. A place away from the Waldorf's constant demands. Somewhere private, peaceful, where they can just be a family. Summer 1895. They take a vacation north, to a place called the Thousand Islands. And everything changes. The Thousand Islands region sits where the St. Lawrence River connects Lake Ontario to the Atlantic Ocean. Over 1,800 islands in a 60-mile stretch, some large enough for estates, others barely holding a single tree. Wealthy families from New York, Philadelphia, and Boston have built summer homes there since the 1870s. Unlike Newport, which is formal and competitive, the Thousand Islands offers privacy and natural beauty. Each family has their own island. No need for social performance. Just water, boating, fishing, summer ease. The Boldts fall in love immediately. They stay at one of the grand hotels. But George, accustomed to running hotels, finds more appeal in private ownership. An island, a summer home, space for children to play freely. They begin exploring available properties. Most islands are already owned. Nothing seems quite right. Then they hear about Hart Island, 5 acres, well situated near Alexandria Bay, has an existing cottage built by Congressman E. Kirk Hart. The property's ownership is complicated. Hart died 1893. His estate sold the island to Edward Wallace Dewey for $10,000 on July 5, 1895. Just 11 days later, July 16, Louise Boldt purchases the island from Dewey. The transaction is recorded as $1. Whether this is actual price, a favor between acquaintances, or simply nominal figure for legal purposes, remains unclear. Regardless, the Boldts now own their first island. George makes an immediate change. The island is called Hart Island, named after its former owner. He changes the spelling to Hart Island. The symbolism is deliberate. This will be a place of love, family, affection. Then he goes further. The island's shoreline isn't naturally heart-shaped. George has workers physically reshape it, moving earth, placing stones, altering contours until viewed from above, the island resembles a Valentine heart. A massive undertaking for symbolic purposes. But George is a man who appreciates grand gestures. The Boldts spend the next few summers at Hart Island, using and expanding the cottage. They fall deeper in love with the Thousand Islands every season. George begins acquiring more property. By late 1890s, he's accumulated approximately 3,000 acres in the region, mostly on nearby Wellesley Island. He develops Wellesley Island extensively. Golf course, polo field, stables, tennis courts, several cottages rented to friends and business associates. But Hart Island remains special, smaller, more intimate, a place just for family. George Jr. and Clover spend summers there, boating, swimming, exploring neighboring islands. Louise particularly cherishes Hart Island. She's worked alongside George for 2 decades, building hotels for other people. The Bellevue, the Waldorf-Astoria, always serving guests, creating luxury for others. Hart Island is theirs, private, personal. By 1899, the cottage feels cramped. The family has outgrown it. George begins thinking about expansion. Not just adding rooms, building something substantial, something that could accommodate family gatherings, host friends, serve as true summer home. Louise has ideas. She's decorated countless hotel rooms, designed public spaces, created elegant environments professionally. What if she could design something without commercial constraints? What if she could build her dream home? George listens. Then he conceives a gesture matching his romantic streak. He'll build Louise a castle. Not a mansion called a castle. An actual castle modeled after the Rhineland castles he remembers from Prussian childhood. Massive, elaborate, unlike anything else in the Thousand Islands. And he'll present it to her as a gift on Valentine's Day, 1905. Their wedding anniversary is June 14th, but Valentine's Day seems more appropriate for a monument to love. Late 1899. George commissions the Philadelphia architectural firm of G.W. and W.D. Hewitt, the same architects who will later design his massive Bellevue Stratford Hotel in Philadelphia. He gives them one instruction: design the grandest private castle in America. The Hewitts begin drawing plans. George and Louise review them, making adjustments. Louise has significant input on room layouts and interior details. This will be collaborative, like everything else in their partnership. Early 1900, plans are complete, 6 stories, 120 rooms, Rhineland castle style with towers, turrets, elaborate stonework, built from rose-colored granite quarried from nearby Oak Island, which George also owns. Estimated cost, $2.5 million, equivalent to roughly $80 million today. Money isn't the constraint. George can afford it easily from Waldorf-Astoria profits. Target completion date, Valentine's Day, 1905. 5 years to build, ambitious but achievable with sufficient workers and resources. Spring 1900. George gives the order. Begin construction. Hire 300 workers. Spare no expense. Hard Island, the quiet summer retreat, is about to be transformed into the construction site for the most ambitious private building project in American history. But there's something George doesn't know yet. Something that will destroy everything. Louise is dying. Summer 1900. Hard Island becomes a small industrial city. 300 workers live in temporary barracks during construction season, working 6 days per week, dawn to dusk. April when ice melts through October when it begins forming again. The logistical challenge is immense. Every tool, every stone, every board must come by boat. George establishes a complex supply system. Barges running constantly from mainland and from Oak Island, where granite is quarried. The first buildings completed are support structures. The yacht house on Wellesley Island rises quickly. Massive steel frame structure over 50 feet high, 160 feet long. 3 giant boat bays, later expanded to 4. Cost $50,000. In modern terms, roughly $1.5 million. For a boat storage facility, this shows how money is no obstacle on this project. On Hard Island itself, the powerhouse rises on the eastern edge, designed to look like a medieval tower. Round stone, defensible appearance, but functionally modern. Inside will be a steam-powered generator providing electricity to the entire estate. Estimated cost, $40,000, $750,000 today. But the most impressive early structure is the Ulster Tower on the island's southern shore. 90 feet high, modeled after a 16th century German defense tower, built intentionally with slanting walls, uneven ceilings, irregular roof lines. But inside, anything but medieval. The tower contains a 2-lane bowling alley in the basement level, carved into the island's rock foundation, perfectly level lanes with proper pin-setting mechanisms. Above the bowling alley, a billiards room, then a library, higher still, bedrooms for guests. At the top, a kitchen and the shell room, a circular space designed for dancing. The tower is completed and opened summer 1899, before main castle construction officially begins. George holds a party there for the New York Bankers Association, demonstrating the building as functional and impressive. By fall 1900, after just one construction season, Hard Island has been transformed. Yacht house finished, powerhouse well underway, Ulster Tower complete and hosting parties, water entrance arch standing dramatically at the island's edge. And in the center of the island, the foundation for the main castle has been laid. Massive stone blocks placed in precise patterns. Steel framework beginning to rise. The castle's footprint visible, 170 feet by 160 feet. Workers understand the scale now. This will be the largest structure any of them have ever built. Spring 1901, ice melts, workers return, second construction season begins. Castle walls rise through that summer. First floor, second floor, granite exterior climbing steadily. Windows framed in. Roof structure beginning. By fall, the castle is taking recognizable shape. No longer just foundation and framework, but an actual building. Throughout the design, hearts appear, carved into stone details, incorporated into metalwork, set into tiles and decorative elements. Not overwhelming or obvious. Subtle reminders that this is a monument to love. George's symbolism runs through every aspect of the estate. Louise spends significant time on the island during 1901 season. She consults with craftsmen about interior details, walks through rooms as they're framed, envisioning how they'll be furnished and used. But something's wrong. Her health is becoming a concern. Nothing dramatic yet, just persistent fatigue, difficulty with stairs, breathlessness after mild exertion. She's 41 years old in 1901, not elderly, but the demands of managing the Waldorf-Astoria and overseeing Hard Island construction are taxing. George notices but doesn't worry excessively. Louise has always been strong. She's worked alongside him for 25 years. She'll rest more when the castle is complete. Winter, 1901 to 1902. The Boldts return to Manhattan. Louise seems more tired than usual. The Waldorf-Astoria's constant demands wear on her. George suggests she might skip some responsibilities. Let others handle certain aspects. Louise refuses. The Waldorf-Astoria is theirs. She built its reputation alongside him. She won't diminish her role just because she feels tired. But privately, she sees doctors. 1902, the diagnosis comes. Tuberculosis, or possibly heart disease. Medical records are unclear and sources differ. What's certain, Louise's health is declining more seriously than anyone initially realized. Tuberculosis is common in the Gilded Age. No effective treatment exists. Patients are advised to rest, eat well, breathe fresh air. The Thousand Islands with clean air and peaceful environment might benefit her. Or it's a heart condition, possibly rheumatic heart disease. Again, limited treatment options, rest, avoid exertion, hope the condition doesn't worsen. Louise is placed under constant medical care. A physician travels with the family, but she insists on continuing her involvement with Hard Island. The castle is her dream too. She will see it completed. Spring 1902. Third construction season begins. Louise comes north despite medical advice. She walks through the castle's interior, now largely enclosed, reviews plans for room finishes, selects tiles, approves wallpaper designs, chooses lighting fixtures. But she can't climb stairs easily anymore. Workers build temporary ramps so she can access upper floors. She sits frequently, needing to rest. George watches her with increasing concern. The construction schedule is still on track. 2 more seasons after 1902. 1903 and 1904 will bring them to the Valentine's Day 1905 unveiling. The castle will be completed. Louise will recover in the peaceful environment they've created. That's the plan, the hope, the promise George made when he started this project. $2.5 million invested, 4 years of work, 300 men laboring through 4 construction seasons, an entire island transformed into an elaborate estate. All of it, every stone, every detail, every dollar for Louise. The castle is rising. The dream is taking physical form. Just 2 more years. But Louise's condition worsens. By 1903, she's noticeably weaker. Walking through the castle requires frequent breaks. She can't participate in construction oversight as actively as she wants. George hires staff to handle details she would normally manage herself. She insists on continuing involvement. This is her castle, her dream. She'll see it through to completion. When finished, she tells George, she'll have time to rest properly. The castle will be their sanctuary. She'll recover there. George wants to believe her. The castle is nearly done. The hardest work is complete. Just finishing touches remain. She can rest soon. Everything will be fine. Fall 1903. Fourth construction season ends. The castle is approaching completion. Most interior work finished. Furnishings being installed. Landscaping substantially done. Swan pond ready. Gardens planted. One more construction season. Spring through fall 1904. Final details, touch-ups, testing systems. Then Valentine's Day, 1905, the unveiling, the gift presented. George still believes Louise will see it. She has to. 5 years of work, 300 men, $2.5 million. Every detail chosen to please her, every room designed around her vision. The grandest private castle in America, built entirely as proof of how much he loves her. She will recover. The castle will save her. The 1,000 islands will heal her. He's built a monument to love. Love will be enough. Winter 1903 to 1904. George and Louise return to Manhattan. Her condition continues declining despite constant medical care. Spring 1904 arrives. Final construction season begins. Workers return to Hart Island. Schedule shows Valentine's Day, 1905 as completion date. 10 months away, just 10 more months. Louise stays in Manhattan, too weak to travel north, too ill to see the castle she helped design. George receives reports from Hart Island. Work proceeding on schedule. Everything coming together beautifully. The castle will be ready. She just needs to hold on. Summer 1904. Louise remains in New York, bedridden now, physicians constantly attending. George at her side when Waldorf-Astoria duties allow. Their children visiting, everyone hoping, praying, waiting for improvement that isn't coming. On Hart Island, 300 men continue working, unaware, installing final fixtures, completing gardens, polishing details, building a castle for a woman who will never see it finished. December 1904. Louise's strength fails completely. January 1905, she's confined to bed, barely conscious. The physicians can do nothing more. George sits beside her, holding her hand, watching the woman he's loved for 26 years slip away. He cannot stop it. Money cannot stop it. The castle cannot stop it. January 7th, 1904. Morning. Louise Augusta Carr Boldt dies, age 42. George doesn't move for an hour, just sits there, holding her hand, refusing to accept she's gone. Then he stands, walks to his desk, writes a telegram. 3 words. Stop all construction. The telegram reaches Hart Island that afternoon. When the foreman reads it, he doesn't understand at first. Stop all construction? Temporarily? Until when? He sends a return telegram asking for clarification. George's reply is immediate and final. Stop everything. Do not return. Within hours, 300 workers drop their tools. Stonemasons leave chisels on workbenches. Carpenters abandon saws on sawhorses. Painters leave brushes sitting in paint cans. Electricians stop mid-installation. 300 men put down their tools and leave the island. Not temporarily, not until spring. Permanently. The castle stands approximately 90% complete. Exterior entirely finished. All 6 stories, all towers, roof installed, windows and doors in place, most interior work done, walls plastered, floors laid, much of the woodwork installed, some rooms completely furnished. The powerhouse is operational. The yacht house stands ready. The Ulster Tower has hosted parties for years. The gardens are planted. The swan pond is completed, waiting for swans. 4.5 years of work, $2.5 million invested, hundreds of thousands of hours of skilled labor. The largest private castle in America, nearly ready for occupancy. All of it built for Louise. The Valentine's Day unveiling is scheduled for 13 months away, February 14th, 1905. One more construction season would finish everything. But Louise is dead. The castle was for her. Without her, it has no purpose. George orders construction stopped, never reverses that decision. And according to most accounts, he never sets foot on Hart Island again. Not once, not ever. Whether this is literally true or essentially accurate, One thing is certain: he never lives there, never finishes it, never uses it as intended. The telegram's stopping construction becomes the emotional center of the Boldt Castle story. That moment when 300 workers dropped their tools, when the dream ended abruptly, when love's monument became love's tomb. Some accounts romanticize this. George was so grief-stricken he couldn't bear to continue. The castle without Louise was meaningless. He abandoned it as a gesture of absolute devotion. Others interpret it more pragmatically. Historian Paul Mallow suggests in Boldt Castle in Search of the Lost Story that Louise had been the primary driver of the project. George funded it and provided logistical support, but it was her vision. When she died, there was no reason to continue building something she wanted, but he merely facilitated. Another theory: costs were spiraling. The project had consumed $2.5 million with another season needed. George may have used Louise's death as justification to halt an increasingly expensive endeavor he'd been questioning financially. These interpretations aren't mutually exclusive. George was genuinely grief-stricken. That's unquestionable. Louise had been his partner for 26 years. Everything he built with her. But he was also practical. The castle's purpose was to please Louise. Louise was dead. Finishing it wouldn't bring her back. Spending another several $100,000 to complete a building he'd never use made no sense. Grief and pragmatism could coexist. Whatever his exact reasoning, the result is clear. Construction stopped. The castle was left as it stood on January 7, 1904. George returned to work at the Waldorf-Astoria within weeks. He had responsibilities, employees depending on him, business requiring attention. He also had the Bellevue Stratford to manage. That hotel had opened in 1904, just as Louise died. George threw himself into work. The alternative was contemplating the loss. Work provided purpose, distraction, structure. But he continued visiting the Thousand Islands each summer. Not Hart Island, that remained abandoned, but Wellesley Island, where he maintained the farms and other properties. From Wellesley Island, he could see Hart Island, close enough that the castle was visible across the water. A constant reminder of what he'd built and why it remained unfinished. Whether that proximity was painful or comforting, perhaps both, George never said publicly. He continued his philanthropy. Sources suggest he anonymously funded college education for at least 75 students over his lifetime. He donated to charities Louise had supported. But he never spoke publicly about Hart Island, never discussed the castle, never explained his decision to abandon construction. That part of his life was closed. December 5, 1916. George suffers a heart attack at his suite in the Waldorf-Astoria. He dies that day, age 65, 12 years after Louise. His funeral is enormous. Traffic on Fifth Avenue stops for the procession. The New York Times obituary declares him more than any other man responsible for the modern American hotel. He's buried at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx beside Louise. His estate is valued at approximately $15 million, roughly $400 million today. George Jr. and Clover inherit the castle. They also inherit the problem of what to do with it. Neither wants to complete it. The project was their parents' dream, not theirs. 1918, 2 years after George's death. The siblings sell Hart Island. The buyer is Edward John Noble from nearby Gouverneur, New York, owner of Beechnut, the businessman who helped make Lifesavers candy famous. Noble sees potential in the castle's mystery. Newspapers have covered its construction and abandonment extensively. Tour boats pass the island daily. He imagines a hotel, a resort, a paid attraction. But he never invests in finishing or guarding the property. Instead, he allows visitors to come freely, often with no admission and little supervision. This decision, allowing public access without proper security or maintenance, proves disastrous for the castle's condition. For the next several decades, Hart Island suffers 3 forms of destruction: weather, vandalism, opportunistic theft. Weather is relentless. Thousand Islands' winters are harsh. Snow accumulates heavily. Ice forms on everything. Wind tears at roofing. Water seeps through openings, freezing and expanding. cracking stone and mortar. The castle was never fully sealed. Water enters freely. Winter after winter, ice forms inside rooms, breaking plaster, warping woodwork. 1939. Fireworks set the powerhouse roof on fire. The fire destroys everything combustible, leaving only the stone shell. 1942. During World War II, Hard Island is systematically stripped of iron and steel for the war effort. Workers remove reinforcing bars, structural elements, decorative ironwork. The removal weakens parts of the structure. But vandalism accelerates the decay faster than weather. With no guards, no oversight, no consequences. Visitors treat the castle as playground and canvas. Graffiti covers walls, names, dates, messages scrawled everywhere. People break windows deliberately, smash decorative elements, knock holes in walls. Worse than vandalism is theft. Anything valuable and portable disappears. Copper pipes and wiring stripped out. Decorative metalwork pried off walls and railings. Carved wooden elements removed. Tiles chiseled out. Light fixtures vanish. Louise's Italian gardens become overgrown. Without maintenance, weeds overwhelm flower beds. Hedges grow wild. Fountain pools crack and fill with debris. Statuary topples or is stolen. The swan pond becomes stagnant. No swans are ever introduced. By the 1950s and 60s, Hard Island looks like a romantic ruin. Beautiful from far away. Broken up close. Photographs show vines crawling out of empty windows and trees growing where furniture should have been. Some call it haunting. Engineers call it unsafe. Edward Noble dies 1958. His foundation inherits the island, but does little to save it. By the 1970s, structural engineers warn that parts of the castle are becoming dangerous. Walls are unstable. Floors could collapse. The castle is approaching the point where it might need to be demolished rather than saved. 1977. The E.J. Noble Foundation begins searching for someone, anyone, who could rescue the place. The Thousand Islands Bridge Authority steps forward. The Bridge Authority manages bridges connecting the United States and Canada across the St. Lawrence River. They care about the region's economy. They believe a restored Boldt castle could bring jobs and pride back to local towns. The deal is unusual. The foundation will transfer Hard Island for $1 if the Bridge Authority agrees that every dollar of visitor revenue will be spent on restoration and upkeep. No government funds. The site must pay for itself. The Bridge Authority agrees. Fall 1977. Transfer completed. The evaluation is sobering. 73 years of abandonment has caused extensive damage. Rough estimates say $15 million will be needed just to stabilize and begin restoration. But they sign anyway. It's time to save the castle. Winter 1977 to 78. Crews work on emergency stabilization, bracing weak walls, patching urgent roof leaks, fencing dangerous areas. Spring 1978. Hard Island reopens to the public. Not as a polished attraction, as an honest work in progress. Visitors see the damage and the repairs at the same time. Scaffolding against carved stone, piles of materials beside crumbling walls. People in hard hats doing careful work. The message is clear. This is being saved. Your admission directly funds this work. That first season, 99,000 people visit. Far more than expected. Imho. Their admission fees go straight into new roofs, stronger structures, basic security. A virtuous cycle begins. The more people come, the more work can be done. The more progress people see, the more they want to return. Over the following decades, the restoration continues. The first floor is restored to how it would have looked if completed in 1905. The second floor follows. But the third and fourth floors remain largely unfinished. This is intentional. The incompleteness is part of the story. Boldt Castle's power comes from being unfinished. George's grief made permanent. Louise's absence made visible. By the early 2000s, nearly $30 million has been reinvested into the island, all from visitor revenue as promised. No tax dollars, No corporate sponsors. Just people moved by the story of George and Louise. Today, Hart Island operates seasonally. Mid-May opening, mid-October closing. During operating season, accessible only by boat, tour companies run regular trips. Private boats can dock and visit. The island employs approximately 60 seasonal staff during summer, managing 200,000 visitors annually. But here's what makes this restoration truly extraordinary. Everything was funded by the story itself. People didn't just come to see architecture, they came to feel something, to connect with George and Louise's tragedy, to walk where love once built monuments. The castle George thought meaningless without Louise became meaningful to everyone. 73 years of abandonment, scheduled for demolition, saved by strangers who believe some monuments matter regardless of who built them. George stopped construction January 7, 1904. The Thousand Islands Bridge Authority restarted it May 20, 1978. 74 years between. But the work George began, others finished. Not exactly as he planned, but in ways that honor his intention while serving purposes he never anticipated. Walk through Boldt Castle today, and you experience something unique in American historic sites. The first floor is magnificent, completely restored. Grand hall with sweeping staircase, drawing rooms, dining room, library, all finished to what George and Louise would have seen if the castle had been completed in 1905. Furniture arranged period appropriately, paintings on walls, curtains at windows, carpets on floors. Throughout the first floor, hearts appear subtly in decorative elements, carved into woodwork, formed in tile patterns, cast into metal fixtures. Not overwhelming unless you're looking for them, but once you notice the pattern, you see hearts everywhere. George's symbolism woven into every surface. The second floor houses family bedrooms and private spaces. The Boldt's master bedroom suite is restored. Large bedroom, sitting area, private bathroom with period fixtures. George Jr. and Clover's bedrooms are furnished appropriately for young adults of the era. But then you climb to the third floor, and everything changes. The third and fourth floors are largely unfinished, deliberately. Some rooms are completely empty, bare walls, exposed structure, windows without glass in some cases. Other rooms preserve graffiti from decades of vandalism. Names, dates, messages scrawled by visitors when the castle was abandoned. The restoration team left this as historical documentation. Walking through empty upper floors provides powerful contrast. The finished elegance below, the raw incompleteness above. You understand immediately what stop all construction meant. These floors show the work that never happened, the rooms Louise never furnished, the spaces George never saw completed. This is the genius of the restoration. The castle isn't just preserved, it's honest. It doesn't pretend George completed it, doesn't erase the abandonment, doesn't romanticize without acknowledging pain. The estate tells truth. Ambition interrupted, love ended by death, decades of decay, eventual rescue, all of it visible, all of it honored. Outside, the Italian gardens are restored to formal elegance. Geometric flower beds, fountains operating, water flowing through pools, statuary positioned along pathways. The swan pond is functional again. Swans do live there during summer months. White, graceful, exactly as Louise envisioned. The dove cote stands near the castle. Doves inhabit it, flying around the grounds and returning to roost, bringing Louise's vision to life. The Ulster Tower remains one of the estate's most fascinating structures. Visitors can tour it, see the bowling alley in the basement level, the billiards room above, the library, bedrooms, the shell room at the top. The powerhouse, fully restored externally, houses exhibits inside. Display panels explain how steam generators provided electricity in the early 1900s. The yacht house on Wellesley Island is accessible via shuttleboat. Inside, antique wooden boats are displayed, showing the variety George owned. But here's what makes Boldt Castle more than just another historic house: the emotional engagement. Every year, over 100 weddings occur at the castle. Couples marry in the Italian gardens, in the Ulster Tower's shell room, on terraces facing water. The irony is profound. George built this privately for one woman. Now it's one of New York State's most popular public wedding venues. The most intimate gesture imaginable became the most shared ceremony space. But perhaps that's appropriate. Love shouldn't be hidden. George and Louise's partnership, building hotels together, creating beauty together, supporting each other's dreams, was remarkable. Their story deserves to be shared. The castle makes it tangible. Couples who marry at Hart Island understand they're participating in larger narrative. They know George and Louise's story. They know the castle was built as ultimate romantic gesture. They know it was never completed. Marrying there means accepting that context. Love and loss intertwined. Romance and tragedy inseparable. Every wedding at Boldt Castle implicitly acknowledges that love exists within time, that mortality shadows every commitment, that vows are made despite uncertainty. That's more honest than most wedding venues offer. The castle doesn't pretend love conquers all or guarantees eternal happiness. It shows that love matters precisely because time is limited. George had 26 years with Louise. Not enough, but what he had was real. The castle proves it. So what does Boldt Castle actually mean? Why does this story matter 120 years after George sent that telegram? Because it's not really about a castle. It's about what we choose to save, what we decide is worth remembering, what we believe deserves to endure. George Boldt built this castle to prove his love. He spared no expense. He reshaped an island. He hired the finest craftsmen in the world. He spent 4 years and a fortune creating something that would stand for generations. And then Louise died. George walked away. He abandoned the castle because without her, it meant nothing. The stone was just stone. The marble was just marble. The hand-carved woodwork was just wood. Without Louise to share it with, the castle was a tomb rather than a home. He abandoned it to honor his grief, to say to the world, I cannot continue without her. Finishing this would mean accepting that she's gone, and I refuse to accept that. In a way, that's the most romantic thing he could have done. Not finishing the castle was his final act of love. It was his way of saying, our dream was not the building. Our dream was us, and without you, there is no dream worth pursuing. But here's where the story becomes something more than tragedy. Strangers, people who never knew George or Louise, people born decades after they died, decided to finish what love started. Not for George, not for Louise. For the idea they represented. The idea that love is worth building for. That devotion can be made physical. That relationships, at their best, create something larger than the two people involved. Something that can inspire others. Something that can matter even when the original lovers are gone. This is not a story about wealth. Plenty of men were richer than George Boldt. The Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Vanderbilts. They all built grander estates, bigger mansions, more elaborate palaces. This is not a story about architecture. Plenty of buildings are more impressive than Boldt Castle. This is a story about what we leave behind, and whether it matters. George thought his legacy was Louise. When she died, he thought his legacy died with her. But he was wrong. His legacy wasn't Louise. His legacy was the idea that love is worth building for. That some relationships are so profound, so transformative, that they deserve to be commemorated. That grief, as devastating as it is, doesn't erase what came before. The people who restored Boldt Castle understood something George couldn't see through his grief. They understood that the castle wasn't just his, it was everyone's. It was a reminder that love exists, that it builds, that it creates, that it endures even when the people who felt it are gone. Every visitor who walks through those halls is participating in George and Louise's story. Every couple who gets married there is honoring their love. Every child who runs through the gardens is living in the world they tried to create. Louise never saw her castle finished. George never saw it either. But we do. Every visitor, every wedding, every photograph. We see what they dreamed, and maybe that is enough. Maybe legacy isn't about what you finish. Maybe it's about what you start, what you inspire, what you make others believe is possible. George Boldt started something he couldn't finish, but others did. And in doing so, they proved that love stories don't have to end the way they began. Sometimes they end better, because Bold Castle today is more than George and Louise ever imagined. It's not a private monument, it's a public treasure. It doesn't serve one family. It serves everyone who believes that love is worth celebrating, worth remembering, worth fighting to preserve. That's the meaning of Bold Castle. Not the building itself, but what it represents. The triumph of love over loss. The power of community to preserve what individuals abandon. The idea that some stories are too important to let die. And perhaps most importantly, the reminder that grief, no matter how overwhelming, doesn't get the final word. Love does. Stand in a third-floor room at Bold Castle today. Empty space. Bare walls. Some with graffiti from decades of abandonment. Exposed brick where plaster never covered. Window frames empty or holding glass installed during restoration. The room is both complete and incomplete. Structurally sound, aesthetically raw. This is intentional. The restoration team could finish this room. They have money, skills, plans. They choose not to. The incompleteness serves purpose. It teaches what completion cannot. In this empty room, you understand what stop all construction meant. Workers walked away. Projects ended mid-task. Plans were abandoned. George's telegram from January 7, 1904, had permanent consequences visible 120 years later. The room shows time stopped, work interrupted, dreams left hanging. Walk back downstairs to the finished first floor. Completely different experience. Elegant rooms, period furniture, restored to how they would have appeared in 1905 if construction had continued. Beautiful, functional, complete. The contrast between floors is the point. Completion shows what was intended. Incompleteness shows what was interrupted. Together they tell a complete story. Separate, each would be less powerful. The castle's meaning emerges from their juxtaposition. This raises philosophical question. Would completing the castle now be right or wrong? Arguments for completion exist. George intended finished castle. Original plans survive. Craftsmen could complete remaining rooms to specifications. The estate would be more impressive, fully finished. Arguments against completion are stronger. George stopped construction for reason. Louise died, and finishing what was built for her felt wrong to him. Completing it now violates his decision. The incompleteness has become the castle's most powerful feature, teaching through absence. Finishing it would erase that teaching, would make it just another completed mansion rather than unique monument to interrupted love. The restoration team chose correctly. Finish enough to show intention, leave enough incomplete to show interruption. Balance achievement and loss. Honor both George's vision and his grief. This philosophy extends beyond architecture. Life itself is unfinished masterpiece. We plan, build, dream. Then circumstances interrupt. Death, illness, chance. Nobody completes everything they intend. Most lives end with unfinished business, unrealized dreams, projects abandoned. I don't know, the castle normalizes that experience, makes it visible, shows that incompleteness doesn't mean failure. George Boldt was extraordinarily successful. Immigrant dishwasher who became wealthy hotelier. Built empire, achieved American dream. Yet his masterpiece remained incomplete. Success and incompleteness coexisted. That's honest in ways our culture often isn't. We celebrate completion, achievement, success. We hide failure, incompleteness, abandonment. The castle refuses that concealment. It displays incompleteness proudly, says this matters even unfinished. This teaches precisely because incomplete. George's other legacies were completed. The Waldorf-Astoria operated successfully for decades. The Bellevue Stratford served Philadelphia through much of the 20th century. But we don't remember George primarily for those successes. We remember him for the unfinished castle. The incomplete monument teaches more than the completed hotels. The abandoned project resonates more than the successful businesses. There's irony in that. George's professional successes, the things he finished, are footnotes. His personal failure, the castle he abandoned, is what made him memorable. Not because failure matters more than success, but because the specific incompleteness of this project reveals something universal about love, loss, and human limitation. The castle also demonstrates George's character. After Louise died, he could have finished it. He had money, resources, workers ready to continue. Completing would have taken maybe 6 months of additional work. The investment was already made. $2.5 million spent. Most work done. Finishing would have cost relatively little and created valuable property. He chose not to. Chose to abandon millions of dollars in investment. Chose to leave unfinished what was 90% complete. That decision reveals his grief's depth. The castle without Louise was meaningless. Completing it would have been betrayal. Moving forward when he couldn't move forward. Finishing what should have been shared. That choice has been second-guessed for over a century. Historians debate whether George acted from grief or pragmatism, whether he was honoring Louise or just cutting losses, whether the abandonment was romantic gesture or business decision. Probably it was both. Grief and pragmatism aren't mutually exclusive. George was devastated by Louise's death. That's unquestionable. He was also a practical businessman who understood sunk costs. The castle without purpose didn't make financial sense. Grief and economics could align in the decision to stop. What matters is the result. The abandoned castle became more meaningful than completed castle would have been. George's decision, whatever the precise mix of motives, created something profound. Not what he intended. He intended private gift for Louise. But what emerged was public monument teaching about love, loss, and mortality. George never discussed the castle publicly after 1904, never explained his decision, never visited the island again. That silence has become part of the story. What George didn't say speaks as powerfully as what the castle does say. The silence lets the building speak. The empty rooms, the abandoned tools, the gardens planned but never completed as envisioned, the yacht house ready for boats that never came, the powerhouse built to supply electricity to life that wasn't lived. All these speak without words about hopes interrupted and dreams ended. George died December 5, 1916, 12 years after Louise. Heart attack at age 65. In those 12 years, he never returned to Hart Island. Continued working. Continued summering in Thousand Islands at Wellesley Farms. Continued his philanthropy. But never set foot on the island where the castle stood unfinished. That restraint is remarkable. The island was visible from Wellesley. George could see it across the water. Every summer, the unfinished castle was there. Reminder of what he'd built and why it remained incomplete. He never gave in to curiosity or nostalgia or desire for closure. He stayed away. Was that healthy grief processing or avoidance? Honoring Louise's memory or punishing himself? Moving forward or staying stuck? Probably elements of all. Grief is complicated. 12 years is long time to maintain absolute avoidance. But George maintained it until he died. His burial beside Louise at Woodlawn Cemetery completed the arc, built castle for her, abandoned it when she died, never returned, died, buried beside her, the monuments to his estate, the castle unfinished on the island, the shared grave in the Bronx. Both speak about partnership, loss, devotion. The castle stands today because others recognize value George couldn't see when he abandoned it. He thought it meaningless without Louise. He was wrong. It became meaningful precisely because of her absence. The incompleteness teaches what completion couldn't. That recognition took 73 years. From 1904 to 1977, the castle decayed. Then strangers intervened. Bridge authority staff who'd never met George or Louise but understood the castle mattered. They rescued it. Not for George, not for Louise, for everyone. not to complete his vision, but to preserve his interruption. The restoration is now 47 years old, two-thirds as long as the abandonment. The castle has been maintained longer than it was neglected. The rescues succeeded. The monument survived. The story continues being told. Over 4 million people have visited Hart Island since 1978. 4 million people walking through George and Louise's unfinished dream. 4 million people understanding something about love, loss, time, mortality through architecture. 4 million people completing the castle in their imaginations. Each visitor saying what might have been. That's more than George imagined. He built for one person. The monument serves millions. The private gift became public treasure. The intimate gesture became universal teaching. The castle George thought meaningless without Louise became meaningful to everyone. Hart Island today. Summer afternoon. Boats arrive carrying visitors from Alexandria Bay. People walk through the castle, exploring rooms both finished and empty. They stand in gardens Louise designed. They photograph towers George built. They listen to stories about love, loss, ambition, grief. Then they leave, return to mainland, continue their lives. But something changes. They've seen monument to love that's honest about mortality. They've walked through building that admits incompleteness. They've experienced place that honors grief without being defeated by it. That's what the castle does. Not through preaching, not through explanation, through presence, through stone and absence, through finished rooms and empty rooms existing side by side, through beauty interrupted but still beautiful. George Boldt started as dishwasher, became hotelier, built castle, lost his wife, abandoned his dream, died. The progression seems tragic, success undermined by loss. But that reading misses what matters. George had 26 years with Louise, built empire with her, created beauty alongside her. Experienced partnerships so profound that when it ended, he couldn't continue project that was all about their shared life. That's not tragedy. That's love proving itself real through grief's depth. The castle stands as proof, not proof that love conquers all. It doesn't. Louise died. George grieved. The castle remained unfinished. Love didn't prevent loss or erase pain. But love mattered enough to build monuments for, to spend fortunes on, to abandon when the person it honored was gone. That matters. In culture that often treats love casually, the castle stands as counterargument. No, love matters enough to build castles for. Love matters enough that when it ends, leaving things unfinished is appropriate response. Love matters more than completion, more than financial sense, more than moving forward efficiently. The monument George built for one person now serves millions. Every couple who marries there participates in tradition George started, building, however temporarily, monuments to love. Every visitor who walks through gardens or empty rooms understands something about mortality and devotion. Every person who sees the castle from the water recognizes that some human experiences transcend individual lives. Unlike other Gilded Age mansions, ego projects proving wealth and status, this was gift, personal, intimate, built not to impress society, but to please one woman. That difference matters. Ego monuments are everywhere. Love monuments are rare. The Breakers, Biltmore, Marble House, impressive buildings showing what money can buy. Bold Castle shows what love can inspire. The distinction isn't about which buildings are bigger or more elaborate. It's about what motivated construction. George didn't build to compete or display. He built to give Louise something beautiful. Different impulse, different meaning. The unfinished state teaches final lesson. Impermanence. Nothing lasts. Marriages end through death. Buildings decay. Empires crumble. Everything is temporary. But temporary doesn't mean meaningless. George and Louise's 26 years together shaped everything that followed. 2 children, business empire, hotel innovations, and castle that teaches millions about love even unfinished. Temporary mattered. Incomplete mattered. Interrupted mattered. The castle proves it. From dishwasher to builder, from immigrant to millionaire, from nobody to man whose monument draws hundreds of thousands annually. George Boldt's life was extraordinary. But what makes his story lasting isn't the success. It's the love, and the willingness to abandon everything when love ended. The castle George built for Louise, left unfinished when she died, rescued by strangers, restored over decades, visited by millions. It stands today not as George intended, but as it became. Monument to love, to loss, to partnership, to the idea that incomplete things can be perfect precisely because incomplete. Heart Island, the castle on the heart-shaped island. Built by a man who started with nothing, for a woman who was his everything. Abandoned when she died, rescued when it mattered. Standing today teaching what George and Louise couldn't have imagined, but somehow made possible. Their love story ended January 7, 1904. But love itself continues. In the castle, in the gardens, in the empty rooms, in the millions who visit and understand something about their own loves, their own losses, their own mortality. George stopped construction. But construction never really stops. Every visitor completes the castle in imagination. Every wedding there builds a new love on foundation of old love. Every person who understands the story adds meaning to the monument. The castle George built for Louise belongs to everyone now. That's not betrayal of his intention. That's fulfillment beyond his imagining. He wanted to give her something permanent. He did, just not the way he planned. From Heart Island, you can see across the St. Lawrence River. Water flowing past, constant motion. The river was here before George and Louise. It's here now. It will be here after the castle crumbles eventually into ruins that nobody rescues. But for now, today, this moment, the castle stands. The monument works. The love it represents matters. George built it for Louise. The world saved it for itself. Both acts were right. Both kinds of love, romantic and human, matter. The dishwasher who became castle builder. The partnership that built hotels and dreams. The tragedy that interrupted everything. The abandonment that created meaning. The rescue that honored what was interrupted. All of it matters. All of it teaches. Heart Island stands as monument to love that admits love isn't enough to prevent loss, but insists love is enough to justify building castles anyway. Imperfect monument. Incomplete monument. Honest monument. That's what George Boldt built. That's what survived. That's what matters. The unfinished masterpiece stands as a reminder. We build what we can, love who we can, dream what we can. Then time stops us. That's not failure. That's being human. George built Louise a castle. She died before it finished. He abandoned it in grief. It decayed for decades. Strangers rescued it. Millions visited it. The monument meant for one person serves everyone. The gift interrupted by death keeps giving anyway. That's the story. That's what Heart Island teaches. That's why the unfinished castle matters more than 1,000 finished ones. The incompleteness is the point. The interruption is the meaning. The absence is the presence. Love made visible through its loss. That's what George Boldt built. That's what survived.